talk about things that are important to us. A lot of us were moved to begin work with refugees here in our community, and we've been doing some really great things. And we have Dave Hodge, who's going to come. He's the church church connection point, so he meets with churches all over the Quad Cities and beyond. And I want to just tell you in advance a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to give an appeal on Dave's behalf right now. So as you're listening to him speak, if you know, there's been a ton of fund. He's going to talk about that. All kinds of funds, and there's never enough money for anything anymore. But this is one other opportunity, as you're moved, as Dave speaks, that you maybe you can partner with World Relief. He's going to give you that information, and of course, he's here to talk. But I want to just kind of put that in you, put that idea in you as he's talking, because this is it's one of those areas that's really a challenge in our community and throughout our country. So. I'm really grateful to have Dave here. He's a good friend of mine. We've known each other for quite a while, and have gotten more and more close here these last few months. So, and then also we're going to have some discussion after that. So as he's talking and you have things that you want to talk about, don't be afraid to think of those ideas and those concepts. All right, y'all. Everybody say hi to Dave.
Good morning. Thanks for letting me come and speak to you all this morning. I'm going to do my best to get set up here, but I'll just give you a brief introduction. My name's Dave Hodge, if you don't know me. And I like to start off and let people know that I've been working at World Relief for a very brief time, actually, since June of this past year. But I've been a part of World Relief for the last 20 years. So I have worked in nonprofits, mostly one nonprofit, Youth Hope, in the Illinois side. And I started off as a youth guy, just working in youth at the youth center as kind of youth director. And my first week there, I had a group of students come in from Bosnia and Kenya. And I had just moved back to the Quad Cities after being off at school, college, looking to go into ministry. Thought I'd go in the mission field somewhere overseas, but ended up in a small inner city church plant in Charleston, West Virginia for 2 years. And then my parents became sick back here, and thought, well, maybe I should move back home. And so I got on at Youth Hope, and not knowing sure where God was going to lead me and take me in ministry. But that was a start for me of going, where did these kids come all the way across oceans to land in the Quad Cities? And their response was World Relief. And so me just being the person that I am, I was like, man, I want to find out more about World Relief. So I called the office, got it connected to the director at the time, Amy Rowell, and we became really good friends. And so we just would go and get coffee, and as things came up at the youth center, working with our refugee and immigrant families through the youth center, I would call Amy, and we would sit down and have conversations and kind of fill each other in about what's going on and how do we work together and support each other. Did that for a long time. Through that process, I was just blessed so much to be exposed to the culture that was growing in our community. A lot of that was in the low-income area culture, but not all of it. But it was just this beauty to see this change. And so we had conversations all the time of how do we address the needs of immigrants and refugees in our community as that continues to grow. And so I've watched that population grow to when I left World Relief, 80% of our Rock Island Youth Center, not World Relief, when I left Youth Hope, 80% of our Rock Island Youth Center was refugee immigrant students. And that was growing in Moline and East Moline at the time, too, and now that's changed even drastically. And so through my time there, I volunteered a ton with World Relief of just being involved with their programs. I got involved with their youth mentoring program in 2019 in the summer and met one of their directors at the time, Leah Cox, who was working in youth mentoring. And I was trying to get kids connected to our youth centers and our camp. And apparently she fell in love with me, and I fell in love with her pretty quickly. And we got married, and I married into World Relief that way. She went on to teach classes and do ESL. And 6 months after we got married, there was a family that had some needs in their home, and the children were put into foster care, and we were able to take in 2 of the girls, one with extreme special needs, and now they've become our daughters, our forever children, and we've been able to adopt them and continue to support their family and their mother. And so my life has been drastically changed because of World Relief, not just because of what they do, but because of how I've jumped in and be involved. And I'm not saying we're a singles service for you to come volunteer in, but it may change your life in huge ways. And I think that is evident if you talk to anyone who's on the Good Neighbor teams here, if you talk to Mary, you talk to Jen, who are leading 2 teams with families, it changes your life to get to be involved with families and serving them in a radical way, which shouldn't be rocket science because that's what God calls us to, right? He says when we love God and we love others, then we find out that life can be lived abundantly and to the full. And so that's really what World Relief is all about. And there is a magic slideshow behind me, so that's great. So I'm going to look off here as we kind of go through it with you. But our mission and vision of World Relief is just to boldly engage the world's greatest crisis in partnership with the church. We envision thriving, welcoming communities where families flourish and people experience restorative relationships with God, their neighbors, themselves, and all of creation. So World Relief is an international organization that was started after World War II, when all of the destruction from the war that was happening. The Association of Evangelicals kind of got together and said, hey, how do we meet this need of all these displaced people? And so they started working with just food and hospitals and medical and trying to rebuild housing for people. So that was kind of the birth. And then as that kind of changed, and that was kind of the problem was starting to get, worked through and solved with that, they just started working all over parts of the world where there was war and conflict, serving people. And so the heart of it has always been that this is our call as Christians to serve others in need. We have all kinds of ideas and thoughts and theories about immigration in our country right now. But to me, it just goes back to understanding that it doesn't matter about politics or policies, that we have a biblical mandate to welcome the stranger and the foreigner. And it's even bigger than that, and just, like I said earlier, just loving others, right? We're called to love others, and some of us say, well, I just like to like people. I don't want to love other people. It's easier to like them and not love them. But we're called to, Jesus even calls us to love our enemies, right? So it's bigger than just how we feel about things or our thoughts or what things may say. Christ calls us to these things. And there's over 140 verses that talk about the foreigner or the stranger alone, and over 900 verses about how we treat the poor, the widow, and the stranger in the Bible. Many of our biblical figures that we know were forced or called to flee their land is what we call a refugee in that definition, is someone who was forced because of either disaster or war or poverty or drought, that they would have to flee their land and find shelter somewhere else. Adam and Eve, all the way back to the book of Genesis, right? They had to actually flee the garden. They had to be displaced from the Garden of Eden because of their decision, but it was a completely new experience for them. They had everything life established, everything provided for them, to being forced out of that, to be on their own, and to have to work the land and figure it out and start over again. Abraham was called to flee his land and to start over. Jacob and Moses and the Israelites. And over again, the Bible talks about what it means to have to be displaced from your land. And so then how are we supposed to respond to those who come into our land who are displaced? And it says, when a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. And that's out of Leviticus. I could go on and on about this. John 1:14 says that in Jesus the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. Strikingly, Jesus' early life was marked by displacement when his family was forced to flee violence in their homeland and seek refuge and safety in Egypt, an experience many refugees can relate to today. As God's embodied word, Jesus identifies deeply with the stranger because he was one. His family had to pick up and move because Herod put out the mandate to kill all of the children. And they were told to get up and flee, as we see in Matthew 2:13 through 14. So again, Jesus himself identifies this as the idea and the concept of the refugee. And then Jesus goes on to call us and says, for I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. And truly I tell you, whatever you did for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And so we're called to live in a way to love the stranger and care for those in need. So World Relief works all over the world. You can see the map behind you in different places in Africa, East Africa, Asia, India, places in Europe, the United States, South America. We're all over the world wherever there's conflict. We are constantly building hospitals and providing food and schools and water, whatever we can do internationally. And now as we talk about situations happening in the United States and how hard things are here for immigrants, I do not want us to forget what is happening overseas and how hard it is for the refugees and for those who are displaced right now, who are without because governments have pulled out aid to provide and care for the basic needs of people. And so as I continue to pursue what's happening in the Quad Cities, my mind can never forget about what is happening all over the world right now and how people are living absolute in despair and poverty, praying to a God to love them and to send help. So just keep that in mind, and you can give to World Relief also internationally through any World Relief website. So our refugees in our area, the majority of them that have been repopulated in the Quad Cities are from the Syrian Arab Republic, from Ukraine, Afghanistan, and then a large group of Venezuela, South Sudan, Myanmar, Democratic of Congo, Sudan, Somalia, and Central America. So those are kind of the vast population that we have been spending time resettling in the Quad Cities and that World Relief has been working with all over the United States. Majority of our clients, there's about 123 million right now who are forcibly displaced worldwide. That number is growing all the time as wars continue to happen and start up all over the place. But the difference, immigration is huge. It's such a huge gambit. I mean, there is so many categories of people who are immigrants. And an immigrant is someone who moves from one country to another with the intention of settling permanently in a new country. And that gamut is huge. I mean, it's refugee, asylum seeker, there's the lottery system, there's SUVs, there's parolees. It just goes on and on and on. And so there's this vast, complex system that has all these different statuses, and there's different doors that people can come into to be a citizen of our country and to start over again. And so it's hard to do that, but our mindset that has been driven into us is it's illegal. And that's not true. Okay, there's a lot of legal ways to come into our country and to be here legally, and to come into our country as an asylum seeker is anyone's constitutional right to come into our country and seek asylum, and to walk in and to find help, to look at that process to begin a new home and a new life because of what they're facing in their country of origin. So asylum seeker is someone who is fleeing his homeland. I know I'm working from the bottom up, but it'll make more sense that way. Asylum seeker is someone who's fleeing from their homeland because of persecution, but the request for sanctuary has not yet been processed. So they're not legally recognized as a refugee. And there are about 5.4 million asylum seekers in the world who are trying to process cases to be able to start a new life in our country because of what they've been succumbed to in their home country. A refugee is different because there's someone who's fled their country because of war, violence, and persecution. And a refugee has a well-rounded fear of persecution for reasons of religion, race, nationality, or membership in a particular social group. There are about 42.7 million refugees worldwide, and less than 1% of refugees are ever resettled. And what makes them unique is they have no citizenship. They have no recognized citizenship. So the country that they've had to flee from has completely canceled their citizenship from that country, and they're living in a camp in another country that does not recognize their citizenship. So they have no citizenship. They have no, I'm from this country. A lot of them will talk about, well, my family, my people were here, and then we went to here, and we went to a refugee camp in this country, and then they come here. But there's this complete disconnect of where does my citizenship and where does my allegiance follow. And so then a lot of refugees are settled all over the world And then for those that are brought to the United States through World Relief and the partnership with the government programs, they're looking to start over. And many of them have faced just horrible, horrible things and what they've experienced. As I said, about less than 1% are resettled. The average stay in a refugee camp is about 17 years. And that's if they are able to return home, if they are able to find resettlement, which now the resettlement has been shut down. And so they will continue to figure it out. And if you think about this is where my heart just breaks a lot. You think about the aid that was in the refugee camps that is not there. And so we have refugee camps all in the world in different climates. Burma, Myanmar, they're in Thailand. And so you think about the people who have lived off the land their whole lives. They're able to grow and produce food, but they're trying to feed, hundreds of thousands of people off what they can grow. And then you have places like Kenya that are desert land where there's no ability to grow food. And how are these people trying to figure out to survive without assistance going in, and they're just waiting for any type of doors to be opened right now. So the refugee process, the process of admission, as they're waiting, they can, hope to start that. It's a long process. It's very few that do it because of the paperwork that is involved, the time consuming that it takes, the cost that it takes to do it. But some go through this process. And I point this out because there's the conversation that people coming into our country are not vetted, and they're just coming into the country. This is the vetting process for refugee admission. The process takes 2 to 3 years, average, if you're lucky, that everything works out. But your refugee status, you have to be given refugee status by the UN, and that can take multiple years just to get status identified by the United Nations that says, yes, these people are displaced. Yes, they will not be able to return home. Yes, we need to figure out what to do with them, and that can take tons of years to figure that out. Then they go through a biometric security checks by the FBI. Then your case has to be assigned to a resettlement agency. You're referred to the United States for resettlement. You have DHS approval. You get recurring security checks. You get more security checks by the FBI, Defense Department, CIA, National Counterterrorism Center. You have medical screenings. You get a visa granted. You have a flight booked. You have in-person interviews again with DHS. You had to have cultural orientation, and then you're given to admittance to fly to the United States. It's huge vetting process. Everything has to match up. They have to have all the paperwork. Our process is crazy, but I remember going to London a couple years ago and riding the train past the building every single day where you would see lines just miles outside of this building. And I asked, a simple question on the train one day to somebody on the train and said, hey, what is that building? I see that line out the door every day. And they said, well, that's the immigration building for refugees who are coming into our country. And they have to come and wait in line, and they will wait weeks to get in the door. And if they get into that door and just one piece of paperwork is off, they have to leave and go find that paperwork and come back and wait weeks again in line to even be seen by a representative. So this is all over the world. It's just kind of a glimpse of what happens. Resettlement in the Quad Cities. Once they arrive here, I get this question a lot. It takes a year of arrival for them to be able to apply for a green card. The green card process, if everything works magically, it's 8 to 14 months. I can tell you as children who've had to process just a replacement green card, it took 3 years, just as a replacement. Apply to be, and that was, you can say COVID or whatever you want to say, but it took a long time. Apply to be a citizen. After you've gotten your green card, you have to be a resident for 5 years. After you've received your green card, and then you have to apply to be a citizenship, which can take about a year to process, just depending on things. And so you're looking like an average anywhere from 8 to 10 years before you arrive and become a citizen. So it's a long, long process that they're going through. So history of World Relief. We established in 1999 as kind of a sub-office of Chicago, and we began resettling as partnership program with the government we are the only active resettlement agency in the Quad Cities. There's a couple different services that are here to offer kind of follow-up services, but we offer We're actually the only organization that's bringing refugees in. We have over 50 staff that speak over 35 different languages. About half of our staff are former refugees or first-generation Americans. We operate on both sides of the river. We've resettled over 3,000 refugees to date. In FY of 2024, last year, we resettled 535 refugees, which was our biggest amount. And the majority, 270 of them, came in from October to December to January last year before the administration change, just because we kind of saw the needs. And then we had a little bit of active resettlement in the first couple months to be able to get 206 in this year. So that's an amazing amount of refugees resettled very, very quickly. The team was just working overtime. We worked through all the holidays last year of just trying to get as many people in the door that we could before that door was going to change. And so we have a lot of families that are new to our area who are still working on figuring out English and jobs, and they need better housing. They need support, and that's kind of where we offer programs like the Good Neighbor Team to walk alongside them in system. We have numerous services: case management, family literacy, citizenship classes, youth services, employment services, behavioral health, immigration, legal services, our Good Neighbor teams, and our food pantry. And then everything kind of changed. And so this is just a little bit of brief summary of some of the orders and things that have changed. The suspension of the refugee program happened on January 27th. May 2025, limited resettlement openings again for certain populations. Yes. And then there was a travel ban put up on 19 different countries. And so in May, we were told that there might be some limited resettlement open again, which we thought would be kind of a light happening for us. But then the travel ban came in for all 19 of the countries that we resettled for. So we kind of knew that nothing was going to move. There was a termination of the grants contracts. And so all of our contracts, the money that we were promised to, that was given to the families to be resettled, was actually withdrawn and shut off. And so us as an organization that's dependent on all of the government contracts to do the resettlement, all the money was frozen and taken away. And then we had the H1 or the HR bill that had eliminated to stop all of refugees and asylees from coming in, from receiving SNAP and medical eligibility. And so the bill that was passed is saying that if you do not have a green card, you will not be eligible. So that's a path of citizenship of people coming in that they have to wait a year before they can even apply for that. And then it takes 5 years to receive it, and then the bill says you have to hold it for another 5 years before you're eligible. That is huge. That is huge to throw on top of people who are coming here with very little, without a start under their feet. They're not coming here with bank accounts. They're not coming here with all these things. They're coming here with a bag of clothes, trying to get started. And so we've excluded SNAP from them now. And then the Medicaid eligibility will end October of 2026. And so that's kind of one of the things like we're just trying to brace for. So we're trying to work on getting families employed, and then trying to figure out how do we get those families onto the insurance through their companies if they have a full-time position that's available for them. And then we got to figure out how can we start building up savings so that they can actually pay for insurance instead of paying not just paying utilities. And I mean, you guys know that, right? We all know the cost it takes to do this for our own families. And so to bring this and throw this on top of people who've just entered our country with nothing, it's such a hard responsibility. So the administration has come out now and says that they've set a cap for us for the fiscal year of 7,500 refugees, majority of them being from South Africa or Afrikaners that the government would like to resettle. So for us as an organization, we will see a very, very small number of any admittance right now into the country. So we are looking at how do we move forward as an organization. And if we're not resettling, we're going to continue to focus on providing services and support. And so our economic empowerment classes, our adult education, our church and volunteer engagement with our Good Neighbor teams, our immigration legal services, our mental health support has kind of become our priorities and how we are shifting. My whole job as the church mobilizer is the good neighbor teams, and I don't have to talk a whole lot about this because you guys are very much aware of this. But the reason why I did want to bring this up is because Mary and Jen has really asked me to kind of say, yeah, we would love more help. We would love more team members on our team to work with the families. You guys have been working with majority of the Sudanese population that we've brought in. There's a couple of families that speak Dinka. You're working with 2 families right now, but because of how some of the crossover in the relationships, there's a 3rd family that's in there, and there's another single gentleman that's in one of the same apartment buildings as one of the families that I know Mary has some connection with a little bit. And so there's lots to do within that. Providing support and caring is just the basic general thing that we ask that you do, is just build friendships. And the more community that they build around them is the more that they begin to feel at home in our country. They're not used to isolation. We like isolation in our country. They're not used to that. They're used to community. They're used to people walking into their doors and picking things up that they need to borrow and walking out. You know, they're used to walking in other people's doors when they have needs and just getting something that they have and then, you know, bringing it back. They're used to people knocking on their doors because it's a blessing to them to have people visiting them. They're used to those things. And so that basic need that we're trying to provide with Good Neighbor teams is just building community, a loving community, a welcoming community around them so that they feel safe and welcome in our country. So I'm not going to go into this. This is kind of what I use for all churches. If you have more questions, talk to Mary and Jen to get involved because they are rock stars. They are absolute rock stars. Yeah. And if you're on their team, you know that, and they are just amazing, amazing people. And so I'm so blessed to get to be a part of this and to have a flood of volunteers. The Good Neighbor teams that are happening, guys, has nothing to do with me. It's 150 volunteers strong right now of 18 churches, or 10 churches that have matched with 18 families so far. I have no part of that. I just answer emails every single day saying, what do you need? How do I help you? They're the ones who are doing all the work. They get all the credit. They get all the reward for what they're doing to serve these families. And it's just amazing to be a part of it. I can't wait, guys. I just continue to have this vision in my mind that one day we're going to be sitting on modern Woodeman Stadium just filled with Good Neighbor teams and refugee families and just showing the Quad Cities what the church can do when it steps up to love its neighbors. That's my dream. And so you guys are a part of that. You guys jumped on early. So you guys have the membership badge before anybody else does. And so I'm super just thankful to be here this morning with you to talk just a little bit about this more. And so there's all kinds of other ways of involvement. There's volunteer opportunities out the wazoo. And my slides got messed up, and that's why I'm lost right now. So there's other ways to get involved. If you're saying, hey, Good Neighbor teams, I just don't have that time commitment, but maybe I could do one-off stuff. The ESL program, I can't talk good enough about because my wife leads it. It's amazing to see what she does to try to teach English, and that is a huge need for all of the immigrants in our community is to continue to learn English and improve on those language skills. And the beautiful thing about it is you get to learn their language also. It is such a cool reciprocal thing. It's something that's been a blessing to get to share time with and spend time with. And you also get to eat a lot of great food because they love to bring food to class. So it's a great opportunity if you're looking to be a part. And they provide childcare for the mamas and the families that need it there. So it's a lot of fun, too, if you love children. Housing setup, we're not looking to right now. It's very minimal if we do, but just going and checking on teams, you'd be surprised of when you go into a house, they have no clue how to operate the things in their home. It's all foreign to them. It's all new to them. And so having to talk about some of the simple things about the toilets and plumbing and now getting into the winter and heat and why you need to keep it on and why you can't run your heat at 90 degrees because that's the temperature you like because you will not want the bill when it shows up. You know, and so just basic things of going into homes and kind of helping assess some of those needs, fixing small things and helping them, you know, learn how to just have those housing skills of how to fix some things. So if you love home repairs, I'd love to talk to you about that. Our food pantry is unique is because we are getting all of our food, majority from international stores, so that we can help them keep some dignity in the food that they received. Food is a huge part for all of us. If I was going to tell you, if you are a steak person, that nope, you can't have steak anymore, you say, well, that's what we do in our family. We have steak every Friday. I'm just like, nope, you're just going to have a box of cereal every Friday now on. You're going to be like, but this is our tradition. This is who we are. Food is a huge part of who we are in our culture. It's a huge part in who they are, and we want to keep that dignity. So we're purchasing most of our food. Some of our families come in that have to have specific food like halal meat. It has to be taken care of in a certain way. It's kind of like what kosher would be, as we talk about in our own states here. And so a lot of places don't have halal food, meats that we have to be able to provide from our families. And they're just not used to our diet. Honestly, the sugars and the processed food causes more health problems for a lot of our families and makes them very sick, and they're very confused why. And so it's one of those things. A lot of our families are scared to drink water even if it's out of the tap, because water is not a safe thing, and so that we have to get bottled water for them because that's the only way they feel safe drinking it. Lots of different issues with that, and so like all food pantries, Youth Hope has a food pantry. There's so many food pantries. There's such a need. Food is such a huge need in our community. I understand that, and so our food pantry is the same way. We went from 240 clients to 470 clients in a month. So ours has doubled also. Our child care, just helping during the English time. Our warehouse assistants, taking donations, making sure stuff gets delivered. I could go on and on. There's tons of stuff, guys, if you'd love to talk to me about anything you can do. Job readiness, just being a friend, bus training, transportation, youth mentor, translator. Kind of our impact report. Are you guys doing okay? I am 2 slides away from closing my mouth, so you all can breathe there, and I can breathe in too. 2025, this is what we did last year. We supported 2,000 refugees and welcomed 210 new arrivals. We had 929 immigration legal services process completed. If you can't clap for me on that one, please. Our immigration and legal services staff deserve that. There was 3 of them. Now we're a team of 5. And the list that piles up on our desk right now is like we're hitting that 1,000 mark of just waiting to be processed. So to say that we have 929 processed, that is just a huge, huge blessing. 98% of our arrivals were placed in permanent housing upon arrival. 85 adults, 41 children are involved in our family literacy programs. We've had 10 Know Your Rights trainings when we're talking about knowing your rights with immigration and ICE and all that kind of stuff. Those are ongoing right now. 110 youth participated in our summer camps. We had 2 families purchase their first home. 21 purchased their first car through a matching grant program that we offer. Our food pantry serves an average of 450 individuals each month. We've expanded services in Iowa. 2 years ago, we've opened up legal services now in Iowa. We have 30 active church partnerships. We have 18 Good Neighbor teams and over 200 active volunteers. That is because of the community and what you guys have done with us to support. So, with your support, we envision, oh my goodness, that would have been awesome. You can edit that out on camera. Nobody saw that. With your support, we envision a fusion of opportunity in which refugees feel welcome and have resources and support they need to thrive. Together, we are strengthening a community defined by resilience, unity, and compassion. And then there's just a QR code if you would like to partner monthly with us or talk to me afterwards of how you can get involved. So I just try to fly through that as much as I can, and I know I talk fast, but I know how presentations go when I'm listening to things. And so I just wanted to open up for question and answers in case you want me to try to touch base the best I can on something else. And just know that I've only been with the organization for 3 months and I don't have everything memorized. So some of the things I'll go, I don't know, but I can find out for you.
All right, first of all, let's thank Dave. Super, really grateful. So you guys are doing such a great job. All right, questions, observations. Maybe Mary has an observation of all the work y'all are doing. I know you don't like to talk a lot, but you guys are rock stars.
So the family that I take care of the most is a mother and daughter team. And something rather sad happened just about a week ago, 10 days ago. So it's a mother that has had 7 children, but only 4 of them are still living. So, and the one daughter that came with her is the youngest, because they were only allowed to have the youngest daughter come here to America in order to help the mom. So they left behind them in the refugee camp 3 adult children, and one of the adult children has a child that's about 9 or 10 years old. One of the other children, they ended up, him and the wife ended up pregnant like in February or so. She was due for their first child this month in November, and they got a phone call just like a week ago, 10 days ago, that the baby died. So I don't know any details. They don't know any details, but the mom is still in the hospital, and it's been like 10 days. So it's really sad, because they were due to come on the next plane here before the borders closed. The United States borders closed. If they would have been able to come, more than likely they would have had their first child, because the first child would have been born here. So it's just a really sad situation that they're dealing with, not only the changes here in our country, but the family that's left behind in Uganda. And so there's nothing I could do about it, except for when I heard the news, I just prayed with them. And and the would-have-been mom is still in the hospital, and it's been like 10 days. I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea the hospital situation in the refugee camp in Uganda. But it's really, a sad situation. The best we can do is take care of the ones that are here.
Thanks, Mary. All right, questions? Observations? Yeah.
So refugees come with a certain form. It's an I-94 form that gives them permission to be into the country. They're moving towards their citizenship process with that. Because of the time barriers and the constraints, the correct answer is supposed to be no. But that is not what we're seeing in situations all over right now. And so I'm not trying to breed any false information or unsafety or unrest in people, but from our clients' perspectives, nobody feels safe right now, if that answers your question. So technically, are they supposed to be safe? Yes.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, Cindy?
So the I-94, and I know with our other family that has the 4 kids, 2 are young gentlemen that are adults that are working, because they don't have green cards when they first show up in the country, so they're allowed to work under the I-94 temporarily, and we have you guys have certain companies like Amazon that work with you and will give them jobs, right?
Yeah, there are some great businesses locally that have opened up their arms to help hire those that do not speak English, those or whatever immigrants in our area. That's always been kind of how we've worked forever. That we've used people coming into our country to work. So yeah, they do. I mean, there's a lot of businesses that do. Tyson, Amazon, XPac, Berry Global. I mean, they're just to mention a few. But those jobs they're kind of, employment's kind of halting. People are questioning, should we continue, because they're scared of, I'm not trying to speak for companies, I'm just telling you from what I hear. There's a fear of, do we continue to hire immigrants into this because it makes us susceptible then to people coming in and trying to, see what's going on and all that kind of stuff. And so there's just a lot of fear right now. There's just a lot of uncertainty right now, and I don't know how to say that, But here's my biggest concern, guys, with this, because if we put ourselves in the shoes of a refugee family for a minute, if you think about what they went through in their country to get where they had to go to flee into a refugee camp. Majority of that is a government became unstable or changed power, or they were a people group that was seen that you're not wanted, you're no longer desired. We're either going to eliminate you or we're going to chase you out. A lot of that comes though from the government and the position in their country of how they came to power and how whatever they saw. And so the people had to flee because of that, because of instability. But the first things they were told is you're not wanted, you have no value. So they go into a refugee camp hoping that they can get resettled somewhere for a bright future. Very few people get that possibility. Those that do come to countries thinking it's going to be a welcoming situation. Now we're in a situation where for the first time ever, we have every single day broadcast of immigrants are not welcome. And I'm not saying this hasn't been a thing in the past for all of our political presidential parties. They've all handled immigration their own ways. We've had deportations, we've had all these kind of stuff happening. But this is the first time publicly, almost every single day, you'll hear about how immigrants are not wanted. And so now they're coming into a country that they thought was going to support them, thought that was going to take care of them. We removed all of those things we promised them we were going to help with. And now we're talking from a standpoint that you are not wanted here. You are an enemy, you're a terrorist, you shouldn't be here. And so how does that make them feel when that's how they originally had to flee their country? Now, where do they flee is the question, right? Even if they wanted to, they can't go back to a refugee camp. They can't go back home. So what is an option? And so there's this huge tension that they're feeling, this huge pressure of just, man, who are we? What do we do? Like, how do we find home? How do we find peace? How do we find rest? How do we find a future for our families? And so that's their thought process. Now, there's just a lot of fear right now.
And just to speak to that too, I think that there's a lot of fear that governs the church, and one of the things that we as people of faith are not supposed to be governed by is fear. When we come to faith in Jesus, it's one of the promises of Scripture is that we should not live in fear. And then just to the national thing, I think that one of the things, and I know immigration is laden with all kinds of challenges. We all know that. But I think one of the things that does make us it's part of our ethos is that we love the immigrant, and somehow we have to kind of recapture that with common sense. We have to make this practical. There's better ways of doing, I think, what we're doing. I think there's better ways of doing it, but I think that's part of the ethos of our nation, and we need to get that back somehow. So
yeah, it just goes back to me, right? You're supposed to love God and love others as Christ loved us. And that's what I tell everybody. I mean, I do these talks all over the place, and I'm okay with people being on different sides of the political party. We need that in our country, okay? And so, but it goes back to that we were all sinners, and Christ died for us. So we're all on the same level field when we start. We're all sinners. But yet, despite that, Christ decided to come and die for us because he loved us. And then he calls us to love him and love others with that same love. And so it doesn't matter who sits across from us. We all have to have the same version, that we all come in the same seat in the eyes of God, that we were all sinners first. And not all of us choose to follow God, but that doesn't mean that God does not love all of us still, right? Because a lot of times we get in that mindset of when we become Christians, well, then God loves the Christians, but he doesn't love others. And that's not true. God still created them. He's still the God of them all. He still loves them all. He still sent Jesus to die for them all. And so we have to have the same eyes that Christ has when we look at other people, that we are called to love them first. It doesn't matter. They're all the politics, they're all the policies out the window. This goes back to what Christ calls us to. And that's the heartbeat that I try to live off of. That's what we're supposed to live off, not with immigrants. We're supposed to live that off of with everybody we come across. Okay, this is just one aspect and one facet of it. But I believe as we begin to open up our hearts in one area, God uses that to open up our hearts in so many others.
Absolutely. When we move forward in compassion and we do the things that are right just because they're the right things to do, it opens a whole area of our lives. I want to bring the worship team up. Let's kind of end some time.
Thank you
with
so much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Be sure that you take some time and talk.